The statement heard around the world, or at least the Celtic world, as Celtic dropped the bombshell late last night that Brendan Rodgers was gone, Martin O'Neill was in, and everything that then followed with the follow-up statement from Dermot Desmond. We're going to get into all that and a whole lot more. This is Tino with what would usually be a countdown to kick-off, but it'll be nothing like that. There's obviously too much going on at this moment in time. Yes, we'll touch on Falkirk very briefly, but it's all about the bigger picture. To join me for it is Greg, all the way in Canada. Greg, what's your initial response? What was your response around about 10 o'clock UK time last night?
Yeah, well, I think I said in my opening gambit for a Hearts pre-match, it's a bit of a roller coaster just now. No idea this was going to unfold. I saw it breaking last night. I was shocked, and I don't know why, because I felt the writing was on the wall after Sunday. I actually thought the writing was on the wall after the Dundee game in the post-match comments, and I think I alluded to that the last time we spoke on the podcast and the show, and I just felt Rodgers had completely chucked it. I thought he was playing his ticket out, and I think I said that to you. I thought it was the right time, but everything that came out when I seen Rodgers has resigned, I thought, okay, he kind of escapes without staying the season and without it getting very toxic. And then I see the Dermot Desmond statement. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then I see John Kennedy and a number of backroom staff going, and it just keeps on going. And I said to you off camera there, I actually feel absolutely shattered. My head's swimming with how much information I've taken in this morning, last night. And I think a lot of Celtic fans are like that. But I was shocked last night, but also I felt the writing was on the wall, and I felt it was the right time for him to move on.
Yeah, do you know, there is a lot of information, a lot of stuff doing the rounds, and we're going to try our very best to touch on at least the main issues over the next half hour or so. We covered our general content last night on the weekly show. As luck would have it, timing-wise, we finished recording, and about an hour and a half later, the big news broke. We've still put the weekly show out. You know, that's there for anyone that wants to check it out. There's lots of stuff covered in it as per, but we were recording on the premise that Brendan Rodgers was still Celtic manager. As we know, he is not. And even though you sometimes know something's coming, Greg, doesn't mean it can't still be a shock. It's not a massive surprise that Brendan Rodgers isn't here, but it's still shocking the way it played out.
Yeah, I think if you'd seen it, you know, as I say, Rodgers resigns, Martin O'Neill comes in as interim manager, you would actually been okay with that. Like, again, I'm okay with Martin O'Neill coming in. He's already said he's reinforced it short term. You've got Maloney there as well, and I think it's actually a really good interim appointment. I think it's very clever. I'm sure we'll touch on O'Neill's press conference at some stage, but he's a charismatic guy. He's known for his man management, so he'll come out and he'll get the best out of players who are underperforming just now. And he has again reiterated it's going to be short term. So as an interim appointment, I'm absolutely fine with it. It's just the absolute circus that's followed it. And I think it will roll on as well. That's not just going to go away. That's going to roll on. Rodgers might come back, and the statement that's been made, it could all get very messy. But there's certain parts, and I know we'll come to it in more detail, that I believe, and there's certain parts I'm reading going, oh, what on earth's happening? Like house visits to Brendan Rodgers, and I'm going, what am I actually reading here? Why has this been publicly aired? Like, it is incredible. So yeah, it's just been a shock. And as I say, John Kennedy as well is a massive shock.
Yeah, do you know, you say it could all get very messy. I think you mean messier, because it's already a mess. It is a circus. You've used that word. It's just chaotic around Celtic just now. And actually, I think when you break it down, it's a three-part story. Brendan Rodgers is gone. That's part one. Dermot Desmond follows up with his wild statement. We'll dig into it in detail just shortly. That's part two. And Martin O'Neill, the returning hero, Martin O'Neill, is back as a manager, at least for a short time. That's part three. Then there's all the subplots that you can talk about between John Kennedy moving on. Not much chat from the players at this moment in time. I was at the press conference. I'll get to that later on. Shaun Maloney saying it was a very tough day at Lennoxtown.
Yeah.
Got a job to do there, lifting the players and different things like that. Let's start with part one. Let's just focus, at least initially, on Brendan Rodgers. His time is up at Celtic. After two spells, he's won 11 trophies. I don't think he'll be back for a third spell, at least not if Dermot Desmond remains in charge. What's your summary of Brendan Rodgers' second spell at Celtic and how it's all played out?
I think it was a surprise when he came back initially. I went all the way back to the start, and he had a bit of a turbulent start when you think about it, but things came right. His record as a manager has been excellent. I don't think, and again, certain people won't like this, but he can be a divisive character in the Celtic sport. He was that as well. And we had a discussion, I don't know if you remember, maybe 5 weeks ago or so, off camera, just before we did one of the shows, about why the summer transfer window was so bad, and about Rodgers being presented with a number of players and possibly knocking them back. I think the board has a huge role to play in this and where it's came to. Rodgers has been dealt a shocking hand, But I wonder in the summer transfer window if Rodgers has also been culpable in that in terms of knocking back numerous players. Now, that's what I'd heard from a pretty reliable source. Don't know if it's true or not. But I feel that Rodgers has maybe been partly to blame for where we've ended up here as well. His drop-off before summer was horrendous. After the Munich game, Celtic's record, you can take away the summer transfer window, it was awful. We dropped off the side of a cliff. And you've got to remember Brendan Rodgers hadn't won a meaningful game, an important game, for a year now. So there's a lot of things you can say about the board. But for me, and I'd say the writing was on the wall for Rodgers, he is absolutely culpable in this. I'm sorry. An outstanding manager for his great record, but he also has a part to play in this and the downfall of where we're at just now. And I thought the timing could have came a week ago.
If not, maybe several months ago. Maybe we'll get into that because
Yeah.
we'll look, and I'm going to read out some of the quotes from Dermot Desmond's statement. And when you read all of that and you realise just how toxic that relationship had become, and that's just the relationship between Dermot Desmond and Brendan Rodgers, there's other stuff at play. Obviously, Michael
Yeah.
Nicholson's in the mix somewhere, Chris Mackay, Paul Tisdale, we don't know where he was at. Apparently him
Who?
and exactly, him and Rodgers were friendly at a time, not so much anymore by all accounts. And there's other players in and around that mix. John Kennedy might be in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. But in terms of Brendan Rodgers, you're right. Now, I was holding on to the hope, the faint hope that Brendan Rodgers could have turned it around, and maybe I was basing that more on his CV at Celtic over the long term. More recent times, you're right, wasn't good enough, didn't stack up, and maybe the patterns were there that this wasn't going to improve. I was more basing it on the guy has won 11 trophies at Celtic. He's done so much. We know how good he can be as a manager, but those days were slipping further and further away. And I think you're absolutely right when you say that he's culpable, or at least in part. And this is where I come at it. I've been saying for quite a long time now that everything that's going on at Celtic is a collective responsibility. I think there are failings and issues at all levels. Yes, Michael Nicholson's top of the tree. Peter Lawwell's doing his thing as chairman. Chris Mackay, CFO. Brendan, Dermot Desmond, Paul Tisdale. All these guys, I think everybody's failing in different, ways. And when you've got that toxic mix, to use that word again, it's inevitable at some point that breaks down. And that's where we found ourselves last night.
Yeah, and what's played out, and you're totally right. Yeah, you alluded to the idea of maybe several months ago, maybe in summer, when they were at completely opposite ends. Celtic wanted to continue with the recruitment plan they'd had in place for years. It looks to me, and from what I've heard, the Rodgers wanted to go off 8, 9, 10 million pound players and big contracts. And at that point, when they're that polarised in their views on how they should go on with recruitment, they should maybe have said that was it, and they should have went in their separate ways in summer, appointed somebody else who they would have backed. He has been given a shocking hand. It's a perfect storm in terms of players there too long, players who were out the door that he then has to motivate to play. But ultimately, some of his team selections, some of the results we've had this year, I keep on coming back to it. It should have happened a lot earlier. It really should have. But yeah, there's a lot of moving parts here, and there's a lot of people not doing their job competently at the club. So I'm not just solely focusing in on Rodgers to blame here. There's a lot of different people who are to blame. And when you unpick the Dermot Desmond statement, everybody keeps on messaging and saying certain parts about it. I just can't see a guy like that releasing a statement with that much anger in it, with that much detail in it, without most of it being true. I don't know. And if it's not true, what does Rodgers come back with?
We'll get to the statement just shortly. In terms of, the parting of ways has now happened. Let me ask you just quickly, why did it not happen sooner? Clearly, there's two big egos at play. Brendan Rodgers versus Dermot Desmond. That's the big characters in this game. And if they realised either at some point in summer, start of summer, end whenever, that this wasn't going to work. He wants the 8 and 9 million pound players. We want to continue giving them projects and guys a couple of million that might work and some won't. If you've got such a huge disconnect, because that's such a notable issue, that's not like what kind of toner should be using the printer. It's not that kind of situation. It's a real massive issue in terms of the football club. And if they realise they were on different pages at that point, the move, and the onus is on the club at that point to say, we can't move forward, this isn't working, let's get around the table, mutually agree, we'll move on, we'll find a new manager, you find a new role. But clearly there's been stubbornness at all ends, and that's what you end up with. Let me ask you a further question, which I put to the boys last night on the weekly show when Brendan Rodgers was still the manager at that time. Do you believe that there was any sort of self-sabotage by the manager? That might be picking questionable teams, taking off Sebastian Tenetke when you shouldn't have to, talking about Honda Civics and Ferraris. Do you think he was kind of at that point where he was just going for it?
Yeah, I think the cynic in me says the board were quite happy to see him fail, and they
Would you
were
say cynic or civic?
clever. And I think they wanted him to fail. I think they wanted this to play out. Certain board members. But I also think in the last couple of weeks, Rodgers, as you say, civic comments. For me, when I heard that, that was it done, and I just could not believe he had made that statement. I said that in the show last week. So yes, I do think it was half self-preservation, Brendan Rodgers, but also knowing that he was quite happy to see the exit door. And again, this is all about opinions. I don't think we'll maybe ever know what's really happened behind closed doors, but I do think there was some self-sabotage by Brendan Rodgers. And I did say last week before the Hearts game to you, if he was to leave before the game, I don't think he'd lose a wink of sleep. I think he was ready for the exit door.
Before we move on to the statement, and that'll form a big part of what we're doing here tonight, how should Brendan Rodgers be remembered at Celtic?
I think that's the thing though. I think he has just escaped in time. I think another couple of weeks down the line it would become really, really toxic for him. I think he's just got out in time and he's resigned his post. If you look at the COVID season when Neil Lennon hung on and he's not done that. So I think he's escaped just in time, that most fans will remember him fondly, and you can't escape the record he's got in terms of the trophies he's won. So timing was correct for him. He gets out just in time and on the whole remembered fondly, but there's still a part of me that, as I've said, I feel is culpable for what's led to what we're witnessing on the park at the moment.
Yeah, there'll be a few asterisks against his name when people talk
Yeah.
about him in the fullness of time. But 11 trophies over 2 spells as Celtic manager, doubles and trebles were his thing. That was the currency he dealt in, and some big nights in Europe, some disappointing nights in Europe, absolutely. Invincible trebles though, and some really great times as
Yeah.
supporters, and I think over time that's what people will remember. What do you think, just finally, his prospects are beyond Celtic? Where is his CV at just now? Where's his standing in the game? Does he get a gig back down south? Does he maybe go to Spain or Germany? What do you see for Brendan Rodgers?
I do. I think he'll get a gig back down south. I heard chat actually this morning, and one of the numerous things I read about the Wolves job
Wolves, yeah.
possibly
And John
lined up.
Kennedy with him potentially.
Yeah, so I could see substance in that. I really could. I could see him going there. Somebody said that Dermot Desmond's statement was career ending for him. I don't buy that. I think a lot of teams will not even give that the time of day. If I'm really honest, I think Rodgers will get another job, and it will probably be in the Premiership, and he will move on. That's where I think he'll go.
Okay. Let's get to the statement then. We could spend a lot of time, poring over the various elements of it, but there's a particular section which I just want to sit on for a minute and get your thoughts. And it's where Dermot Desmond, do you know my feeling, slightly flippantly, is that it feels to me like Dermot Desmond has pulled a PR junior into his office last night and went, get your laptop. And he's just went, right, type this up for me. He done this, he done that, he done the next thing. It feels like a stream of consciousness in some way, rather than the kind of balanced and an objective kind of statement that should follow this. Actually, in general, I thought the best advice, I'm no PR expert at all, but my best advice, amateur advice, would be the first statement that Celtic put out was fine. 3-4 paragraphs. Brendan's gone. We thank him for his time. Martin O'Neill's in. We're searching for a new manager. Full stop. To then follow up with this lengthy, fairly aggressive,
Yep.
fairly volatile statement. So let me sit on this line for a minute. Speaking of Brendan Rodgers, he says, regrettably, his words and actions
Yep.
since then have been divisive, misleading, and self-serving. That is some mud to be slinging around at 10 o'clock on a Monday night.
It really is, isn't it? That's exactly where I went to just as you read that out. My toes were curling when you read it. I don't know. Like I said that last night to the boys in the chat, it does seem very angry, and it seems like he just went almost like a wee kid telling on somebody. It's outlining all the things he did wrong. But part of me also thinks there's no way that's just been made last night. He must have been sitting that for weeks. There is no way Dermot Desmond has done that. I just can't see it. I think he's been sitting in that waiting for that to go out. But again, the anger that comes through it, and the thing about like going to his home in Scotland, like really detailed things,
Mm.
just, it can't not be true for me. And if it's not true, then oh my goodness, we're about to enter a complete different wave of the circus that will continue. If that is not true, the things he's outlined in that statement. That's incredible.
Yeah, someone else I spoke to earlier on says it feels like, and this is similar to what you're saying just now, it feels like most of it is true because it is so detailed. Let me read out a paragraph. Again, obviously speaking of Brendan Rodgers, he says, when his comments were made publicly,
Yeah,
I sought to address them directly. Brendan and I met for over 3 hours. This is
yeah,
specific detail, isn't it? Met for over 3 hours at his home in Scotland to discuss the issue. Despite ample opportunity, he was unable to identify a single instance where the club had obstructed or failed to support him. The facts did not match his public narrative. That is fine detail.
yeah,
And a lot of the talk just now is Brendan Rodgers could go legal. This is such a
yeah.
scathing personal attack and it could affect his future employment prospects, all these things. But I wonder if Dermot Desmond's been so bold here because it's true.
Yeah.
And it's a bit wild and it's a bit scattergun and it's a bit unprofessional in my opinion. But if it's true, it's true. And Brendan Rodgers won't reply and this will just fizzle into the history books.
Well, that's completely where I'm at. When I read it, I had to read it a few times, but in my head, I'm going, that is so much detail in it. There's so many different things there. There's no way that most of it can't be true. Because as you said, Rodgers could go down the legal route. I don't think he will. And if Rodgers doesn't come back in this, then we are looking at it as factual, and the blame does get placed across the Rodgers, and the board continues. I've seen other rumours today, though, even just on the statement and other things coming out about Lawwell and Nicholson not signing their name to it, and rumours that they're possibly moved on. There's a whole number of things and different narratives coming out, but the statement is so lengthy, so detailed, and there's so much anger coming out in it from two guys who are meant to be very friendly. And it was ultimately, we've got to remember, it's Dermot Desmond that brought Rodgers back. And I would say against the will of some of the board, it was Dermot Desmond that pushed Rodgers through initially.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the case. And it seems incredible that the relationship has broken down so dramatically. People fall out in life and business and go their
Yeah,
separate ways. This is quite vicious between the two of them. And, you know, as you say, it's a lengthy statement and it's pretty aggressive in its nature. But interestingly, as opposed to the statement that came out on the Saturday night a number of weeks ago, this is clearly billed at the top of it. Statement from Dermot Desmond to
yeah,
Celtic supporters, and it's signed off effectively by Dermot Desmond at the bottom. So there's no room for ambiguity. There's none of this.
yeah.
Or was it just the PR team? Was it Michael Nicholson and Chris? Is Dermot Desmond just saying, give me that pen, give me that laptop, this is going out? A couple of lines at the end, though, again, I don't think are necessary. There's a line here that just, it's so easy to challenge, and it's where Dermot Desmond says, we all share the same ambition to ensure Celtic's continued success domestically and to achieve further progress in Europe, followed by every pound generated by the club is reinvested towards those goals and the continuous improvement of Celtic Football Club. You cannot say that when there's £77 million gathering dust in your bank account.
Yeah, lol. That was the only bit of it I kind of read and thought he's obviously tried to just put the boot in a little bit there or kind of save face. I read that and I couldn't really get my head around it at all because
Mm.
it's just blatantly not true.
Yeah.
With the current squad and the amount of money we have in the bank, it's pretty bold putting that into the statement.
And he wraps up with a further line. Celtic is greater than any one person. Our focus now is on restoring harmony, strengthening the squad, and continuing to build a club worthy of its values, traditions, and supporters. It's not a very harmonious statement. It's not the kind of statement that would engender harmony, in my opinion. And also just that very short initial line there. Celtic is greater than any one person. It doesn't feel like that, Greg, and it does feel that there's a lot of ego at play on all sides, as I say. Brendan Rodgers, absolutely. But Dermot Desmond seems to have, in many ways, put his personal issues, his personal gripes with Brendan Rodgers ahead of anything here. As I said, the first statement by the club was fine. Just leave it there. But he's clearly had this uck and need to come out and say these words. And I don't think it helps Celtic as a club or the fans or anyone.
I don't either, but I'm trying to be balanced here in my view because I think automatically everybody goes against Dermot Desmond. I'm just looking at it thinking if that's me and I'm Dermot Desmond and I offer Rodgers an additional contract, I want him to commit to the club. And then a week later he comes out publicly in the media and says he's not been offered a contract. I'm furious if I've offered that. If he has also come out, he's slaughtered in terms of the team. He's said he's not been backed. Loads of stuff that's been done via the media and not during these meetings. I'm not saying the whole statement is correct, but I can see where the anger comes from if I'm Dermot Desmond. If that has transpired, and I don't know if that has or not, but I can see the anger there. The only thing I do think, and I said it last week to you as well, by a new manager coming in, I think at least we'll get a January transfer window. And it's the only positive I can take from the last 12 hours or whatever it is.
You've got to take those positives where you can, but
I'm trying.
I'm just taking a wee note here that you are firmly in the Dermot Desmond camp. That's what I'm
I'll be getting the
taking.
hate mail.
Um, let's kind of go back to come forward within that Celtic statement. As I said, short and sweet statement, as it should be when someone moves on. But at the huge notable line at that point, it was around about I think it was 9:44. That statement came out, and it was the very interesting line that Martin O'Neill would be returning as manager, supported by Shaun Maloney, one of his players, one of the players that was part of that Seville team, that big team of Martin O'Neill's back in 2003 and around those times. A lot to process at the time, but what was your feeling with regard to Martin O'Neill and Shaun Maloney returning?
Yeah, again, I think I said at the top of the show, it's a clever interim appointment for me. He has been out of management for a while, but again, he's known for his man management. He'll go out and try and get the best out of players for the next 2, 3, 4 games, however long he's there, and just try and eke a little bit more out of them. The players, and I think Shaun Maloney said today in his press conference, are probably hurting just now. They're probably feeling very, very low. And I think Martin O'Neill's a perfect kind of guy to just lift things in the training ground, get his arm around a few players and just lift them for the next few games, because we have 4 or 5 very important games coming up, no other than on Sunday. So I think you think of Martin O'Neill and you just think of all the romantic memories you have of him on the sideline jumping about, and yeah, I thought it was a clever interim appointment.
I think so too. I think it's a smart appointment because you'd be hard pushed to find a Celtic fan that doesn't not only like Martin O'Neill, adore Martin O'Neill. Martin O'Neill
Yeah,
is hugely popular and rightly so. Since leaving Celtic after a hugely successful time, he's always spoken fondly of the club. He's been back in various ways at club functions and player of the
yeah,
year does, speaks, talks us up on Talksport, all those other places. He's absolutely a modern day Celtic hero. Martin O'Neill is the guy actually that changed everything for Celtic when he arrived, June 2000, I think it was, and we all know what followed from there. So
yeah,
from that point of view, it's not only a smart appointment, it's potentially the smartest appointment they could make, because at a time when the board and Dermot Desmond are firefighting, they're facing a real backlash in various areas, and that will continue. There'll be protests, stuff planned for tomorrow night against
yeah,
Falkirk, and we will get to Falkirk even if briefly towards the end here. They need to find wins, quick wins of sorts. And generally speaking, there's a few folks that have raised eyebrows. Martin O'Neill's 73. His last job in management was 6 years ago at Nottingham Forest, all those things. To push back on that, I'd say he's a very youthful 73, very sprightly, lively, and you could see that even today. And he's paired off nicely with a young, modern, forward-thinking coach. Now, it's not quite worked out for Shaun Maloney in management when he's gone out solo, Hibs, Wigan, anything else that he's done, but a hugely respected coach, so much so that Roberto Martinez took him to World Cups with Belgium and, saw fit to have him as very much a real confidant and a real part of his setup there. Well respected coach, very knowledgeable guy. He looks like a kind of thinking guy when it comes to
yeah.
just football in general. That partnership, that nice, see if it was Martin O'Neill on his own coming in with you
Excuse
know,
me.
John Robertson, Steve Walford types, of the back in the day. Yes, of course that wouldn't work. This balance, even though it's only for a short term, might just be enough. And what I do think as well, you talk about the players there and how they've been down in the dumps, and Shaun Maloney confirmed it was a tough day at Lennoxtown today. Celtic all of a sudden have got a far higher chance of winning on Sunday at Hampden than probably they had 24 hours ago.
Yeah, no, you're completely right, and I think that's why it had to happen. I think they're a perfect foil for one another, Maloney and O'Neill. I think, as I say, Maloney will do the kind of coaching stuff, as O'Neill kind of acts almost above that. He'll come in, he'll talk to players individually, try and raise their game. I don't see him making massive changes. Somebody was talking about 3-5-2s. I don't see any of that. I see him just coming in and trying to keep things ticking over. But yes, absolutely, in my opinion, gives us a better chance to win on Sunday than it did before. And the players will have a couple of days, obviously Falkirk tomorrow, but a couple of days after that to get ready for the semi-final. And I just think you'll see a more motivated, hard-working Celtic team, because I did think the players were really, really struggling under Rodgers in the last few games. So yeah, as I say, it's a clever interim appointment. There's no doubt about it. And I think he reinforced And I think he was very measured about it, very poignant about it, that it's short term. It
Yeah.
won't be long term. And I don't really see it spanning more than 3 or 4 games.
And I think they both answered those questions, that type of question at different times, but they were both keen to stress this is short time. Martin O'Neill's terms today had been that he's just keeping the seat warm for someone. It might be a week, it might be a couple of months,
Yeah.
whatever it is, it's short term. And Shaun Maloney was asked directly, if he's looking to make his way back into coaching. He said quite firmly, no, I was brought in to do a certain role. That's where I'm at this moment in time. You've got to take these guys at face value because there is this strong rumour, strong theory that were being buttered up for Shaun Maloney taking the gig full time, which would be a PR disaster, right?
Yeah.
As I've said there, I respect Shaun Maloney as a coach. He seems a decent guy as well, but he cannot be the next Celtic manager.
Yeah.
And I'd really hope that the folks behind the scenes see that. So I don't think that's what's going to play out. But I do think that it's a fresh start for the players. And actually, it looks like that's exactly what they need and have needed. And if that gives us a new manager bounce, albeit an interim new manager, for the next 3, 4, 5 weeks until the right guy comes in. It kind of means you don't need to hugely rush your appointment. There's talk about, Knutson over at Bodo Glimt, and you need to wait for him to, finish his season and various other guys. Maybe, I don't know exactly who we're in for, but I think it's a smart appointment and it buys you a bit of time at a time when things can be quite hectic. Any names in the mix for you?
Yeah.
What's doing the rounds? What are you excited by?
I'm glad you asked me that because I wasn't sure if you were going to. Well, I looked at I like looking at the odds and just following it today. But the guy, Kieran McKenna,
Yes.
has dropped massively. I think he's into favourite, something crazy. Like it was 20-1 last night. It's dropped right into almost even money, which is a big move. Not saying the bookies always get it right, but I don't actually know enough about him. When I first heard, I was a bit not sure about that name. The one for me, and I kept on saying it, I kept on putting it in the chat last night, was Robbie Keane. Robbie Keane and Damien Duff for me, I think would be a great appointment, the two of them. Know the club, former players. Damien Duff's already did a coaching role at the team. I thought when Damien Duff, we actually had a drop off in our team when he left. I would love to see those two guys back, young enough, hungry enough, worked with each other, played with each other. So they would be my two, and that's a total left fielder. But I would love to see Robbie Keane and Damien Duff back at the club.
Yeah, interesting all round. So Kieran McKenna, Northern Irish fella, really
Yeah.
good reputation, worked wonders at Ipswich there. Got them promoted and then relegated, but they've stuck with him, and I think they believe in what he's doing. He could be interesting. I've heard a lot of chat about him, so
Yeah.
maybe there's something there. I think as well, just quickly, unless it's changed, Martin O'Neill was chairman of the LMA, the League Managers Association down south. Therefore, by his very nature, you've got your finger on the pulse as to who's in jobs, who's doing what, who's the movers and the shakers, who are people talking about. So actually that might position him fairly well to give at least some commentary on who might be the next manager. The Robbie Keane and Damien Duff one is an interesting one for a couple of reasons. I definitely don't want to make this political, but Robbie Keane did go out and take a job in Israel
I
and
know.
got
I've had
entrenched
that
in that
already. Yeah.
position there. So this episode isn't time to labour on that. I don't think he would be a popular opinion just on that. However, the Damien Duff side I could get on board with. I was actually at a
Yeah.
Shelbourne game on Sunday, was over at in Dublin watching Bohemians v Shelbourne. Shelbourne are currently champions of Ireland due to everything Damien Duff done for them, but he walked out halfway through this season and they're going to finish third or fourth by the looks of it. But he worked wonders by all accounts and he was very well respected as a coach, and there's some players that came out after he left Celtic to say he was first class,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
maybe he's got a part to play. There's a lot going on, as we know. Mark Fotheringham is now part of the coaching team. Are you aware of Fozzie?
Yeah, I actually knew him a long time ago, not knew him well, but yeah, I was actually surprised to see him coming in as the backroom staff. But yeah, I'd seen he just came in, I think, this morning.
Yeah, so they were both asked, as in Martin O'Neill and Shaun Maloney were asked about him, and Shaun Maloney was like, he's interesting, he's different, So
Yeah.
I think he's quite a charismatic kind of fella. There's stories of him
Yeah.
doing the rounds, but all that aside, a really talented coach. I think he was out in the Netherlands and Germany and doing some good things. So he's now part of things, and we'll see what that is. But yeah, there's going to be loads of names doing the rounds. Angie's obviously going to get spoken about. You'll get the usual ones that won't come to anything in terms of guys like Bruni and I don't know, a Barry Robinson, a Jim Goodwin. These guys shouldn't be anywhere near it, but they'll win the
No.
running when you look at the betting odds. And as I say, I just think it's important to take your time to get it right. Of course it is.
Yeah.
But it's also important not to take your eye off what's going on right now. And the bottom line is we're 8 points behind Hearts, and we can't afford to drift on it for too long, can we?
No, definitely not. I think I said last night, I think they must have sounded Ange out about it to even come in and take charge till January or take charge at the end of the season. He's just said no. And I think when you look back on it, 2 spells for Neil Lennon, 2 spells for Rodgers, would it be right to give Ange 2 spells? At first I was like, yeah, I'm into Ange coming back. And then I reflect on it a bit more and I don't think it is the right move, but I'd be surprised if they hadn't sounded him out
Hmm.
about a short-term commitment to the club. And I think he's maybe said no. I respect your, without going into the detail of it, in terms of Robbie Keane, I get it. And somebody had said that as well. And I said, yeah, but he's moved on from that. But yeah, I take that side of it. The names you mentioned after that, I think Scott Brown, it's far too early. The other ones that followed shouldn't touch it. But I think maybe Martin O'Neill's seen it's going to be a young manager that's taking the hot seat. And I thought that was quite poignant in terms of kind of highlighting that. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's where the Kieran McKenna things then came, that they've kind of guessed at that of being him. I'm not sure, but yeah, they need to take their time and get it right. They've put a clever appointment in to buy themselves some time, but I wouldn't want to see it going too long at the same time. I wouldn't want it to roll all the way to January.
Yeah. So we know where we're at, generally
Yeah.
speaking. Chaotic as it is, a circus as it is. Brendan Rodgers is gone. Martin O'Neill is here, and Shaun Maloney, and Mark Fotheringham. Dermot Desmond has exercised his power. He is the kingmaker at Celtic. He makes all the calls. And if ever anyone was in doubt about that, it's all there for you in black and white on the Celtic website. And he calls the shots regardless. We know he is not the majority shareholder. He is the dominant shareholder at 34.7%. But again, it does further highlight the dysfunctional nature of how Celtic work, because you've got a chief exec in place, you've got a chief financial officer, you've got a head of football operations in Paul Tisdale, you've got a chairman in Peter Lawwell, you've got non-exec directors, you've got all the execs underneath that, and so on and so forth across the business. But ultimately, if Dermot Desmond wants something to happen or not happen, then that's what will play out. He is calling the shots, and therefore, to a huge extent, all those roles that I've just mentioned are hugely redundant, because it seems that if one of those key players want to make a decision, you need to pick up the phone to Dermot Desmond, and that's how it goes. That cannot be the way, Greg, for a modern, progressive, forward-thinking club.
No, he's overreaching massively, and that's been the problem for years. And ultimately, as I've already said in the show, it was him that wanted Rodgers in, and there was a number of people I don't think wanted Rodgers to return, and now we've came to this again. So yeah, the structure's crazy. It's going to roll on in terms of the demonstrations against the board, which I know can't go away, but they're not helping a group of players who are massively low in confidence and low generally at the moment with demonstrations. But I understand it has to happen. There has to be change. I just feel it's going to be a very, very long road with that side of things, and trying to get change at the top. So short term, I'm kind of just focused on the team and the manager, to be honest. I just don't see the structure changing for a long time, even though it needs addressed.
And the protest, as you say, will continue, and it takes
Yeah.
us, I suppose, as we head towards the end of the piece, to tomorrow night. You know, it's a Wednesday night game. It's, on paper, a very run-of-the-mill fixture against Falkirk, a home game against newly promoted Falkirk at Celtic Park. We've already beaten them 4-1 in the League Cup this season, and that picture has swivelled on its head in the last 24 hours. I was laughing earlier on. I was genuinely in two minds whether to go or not. I just kind of couldn't be bothered, if I'm being honest. It
Yeah.
was a Wednesday night, weather won't be great, Brendan Rodgers, pretty turgid football, and so on and so forth. And rightly or wrongly, that was where I was at. I was on the fence about it. I'm going now. I'm going for the Martin O'Neill show,
Place will be rocking.
and I'm going to see what's what. But tell me, what kind of response do you think there'll be? So there are plans for further protest by the Celtic collective pre-match, I believe, and that's absolutely their right to protest and put their opinions across, and some will be even further fueled by, you know, the statement and recent events. And then you'll have the situation inside the stadium where there's the kind of contradiction of, you want to be angry, but the returning hero is there. Martin O'Neill, Celtic legend, will step back onto the turf a few minutes before kick-off, and I can't see any way in which he doesn't get a rousing reception. So will it be all of that? Pro Martin O'Neill, brilliant to have him back, and then we'll flip into the other stuff. How do you see it all playing out?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate what you've described. I can't see anything other than everybody getting behind Martin O'Neill, and there's been a bit of a buzz about the place when he comes back in and gets a really rousing reception. I'd be really surprised if there was anything other than that, and I think that's what should happen. Yes, the protest will continue, but I don't think that will continue against the board. in whatever way they want to go with it. But I think Martin O'Neill will be backed by most Celtic fans, if not all of them. I can't see anyone being negative towards him. And I think we've got to remember in all this, everybody has an opinion, and what has happened on the statements, on Rodgers and new managers, that's totally fine. But the fans do need to unite in terms of what's happening, in terms of just supporting the team again. And I think I've reflected on that as well, in terms of they are just so low at the moment. They need to get behind Martin O'Neill, need to get behind the players and do the demonstrations however they need to against the board for change. But I think everybody's just got a different opinion just now. And I think the last 24 hours has just been a little bit crazy in terms of everybody throwing these things about. But Martin O'Neill has to be backed, and I think he will.
I think he will too, and I think Shaun Maloney will also be backed.
Yeah,
Popular figure, regardless, if you think or fear that he might become the manager in future. I think he'll be back. They'll both be backed at this moment in time.
yeah,
There is a statement from the collective that's been released just not long ago
yeah,
this evening. I've not had a chance to read it just yet, but importantly, they said that we invite and encourage all Celtic fans to join us outside the main stand from 7 p.m. tomorrow to send a clear message. It is time for them to go. And them, for anyone that's not sure, is Dermot Desmond, is Chief Exec Michael Nicholson, its Chief Financial Officer Chris Mackay, and its Chairman Peter Lawwell. So it's going to be interesting, as it always is at this moment in time. Just given what's going on, Greg, we've not been able to cover much of anything by way of football, but let me just ask you a couple of brief questions with regard to the game. Falkirk feeling good about themselves. They've won 2-1. I think they've been late winners in each of their last couple of games. I believe it was Dundee at the weekend and Motherwell the week before. They're sitting sixth in the table, which is sky high for them. They would take that just now. If the season could finish and they were in sixth, they'd be delighted. And John McGlynn has got them playing quite an attractive, quite a positive brand of football. Had Celtic not made the changes, I was making the point that they would smell blood, and rightly so, in the way that Dundee smelt blood and Hearts smelt blood, and Braga and Kaira Almaty. But but you're in a position now where all of a sudden Celtic could become galvanised. What do you do if you're Martin O'Neill and Shaun Maloney? Do you make wholesale changes? Do you just tweak it a wee bit? Do you kind of go with what the manager's been going with one or two little changes here and there?
I don't think they can make wholesale changes, and I don't think they will, because, well, ultimately they can't. The
Mm.
player pool is so strained, that I think it will be similar to what it has been the last few weeks. I don't think he'll change the system. I think Martin O'Neill's job is to come in and galvanise the players and lift their spirits, lift their confidence. It's not to come in and make wholesale changes, and I don't think he will do it. He's an intelligent man. Maloney's an intelligent guy as well. They'll be sitting saying, let's just keep this ticking over. If we can get a couple of wins here and get everybody's confidence back up, we've done our job until the next guy is permanently appointed. So I don't see wholesale changes, but I do see a big lift. I do think the team will get a lift. I think you've got to commend Falkirk. I actually said before the season, which I've got a bet on with somebody, I said they would finish top six. So they've started well. I think John McGlynn's a good guy and a good manager. But I would have been worried tomorrow if Rodgers had still been in charge. Again, you touched on it earlier in the show. I think we've got more of a chance now of winning the game with the new manager bounced and the players taking a bit of lift as well.
Yeah, I wonder. I think you're right in terms of how Martin O'Neill and Shaun Maloney play this. I think they will just come in and steady the ship, absolutely, keep things in a similar vein tactically. They might say less of the horseshoe and let's go, get it forward a wee bit quicker. Some small changes like that. But I don't think time will allow them to go in and rip up the tactics playbook and say, I know you've gone 4-3-3, we're going 3-5-2, 4-2-3, all of those things, because those types of wholesale changes take time to implement. So what you
Yeah.
could do is fall further behind in the league race and then leave the new guy with a mountain to climb. I wonder though, just thinking out loud here, who has that conversation with Martin O'Neill and Shaun Maloney to say, right, you guys are the guys for the job and don't change too much because it's probably going to be sorted? Or do they say, you've got carte blanche to do what you want? I wonder who does that. And this is where my annoyance comes in at Celtic and generally in football, where non-footballing guys make football decisions, right? Dermot Desmond is a billionaire. He knows a thing or two about business and making money. I would debate what he knows about football. And you could say the same for any other board members or execs. But who is the guy that say, did they say to Paul Tisdale, Paul, go and speak to Martin and Shaun and just give him a wee guideline? Or do you think there's somebody in a suit telling Martin O'Neill how to deal with a football team?
No chance.
He won't take it.
Absolutely no chance. No, I can't see that happening, especially with the likes of Martin O'Neill, and that's why I think it's been a good appointment, because I think a lesser known name, or if it was like say John Kennedy and Maloney, I think that conversation could be taking place. Not with Martin O'Neill. There is no way Martin O'Neill's taking that. He's too clever. he's too much of, he's got that aura about him that he will win and he will know that he can't make wholesale changes. So I don't see anyone from the board going and having that conversation with him. And if they try, I think they might be swiftly asked by Martin O'Neill to exit his office. I don't see him doing that. I don't think he's going to be a yes man while he's there, but he's not going to make big changes.
Yeah, fair enough. Too hard at this moment in time, Greg, to call lineups, potentially formations, scoreline predictions. So we won't do any of that. But funnily, actually, so, as I mentioned, I was at the press conference. Martin O'Neill generally in good form, quite bubbly, quite humorous as he has become in his older years. But he seems quite taken by the challenge. He said that historically in his managerial career, he didn't allow himself time to enjoy things. You know, you're caught up in the moment and the stress. But and Martin O'Neill was quite a stressy guy at times as well. But he said he was going to try, if possible, to enjoy things. But he caveated that with saying you can only enjoy it if you win. So
Yeah.
Martin was a very nice, likeable guy. You know, as I say, roundly adored by Celtic fans. But don't be fooled by age or anything else. He still has that steely determination and bit between the teeth when it comes to winning games of football.
Oh no, absolutely. He's not to be crossed, and I think the players will get that message pretty soon in training. But again, I know I've said that a few times. I think it's his man management that just it needs to come into play, and he's so good at it. Just about lifting players. So yeah, I had my score prediction ready to go. Tino, you said we weren't going to cover any of that, but I see Celtic
I'll
winning.
take it. What
I
you
say
got?
comfortably. I'm saying comfortably. I said 2-0. I think Celtic win 2-0 tomorrow. I think it'll be a better performance than what we've seen. I do think we'll get the win to take us into Sunday. I totally agree with you. The team selection is very difficult to call, but just with the amount of players we have out and with the squad depth being so poor, you can actually kind of have a rough idea what it's going to like and it look like, and I don't think it'll be dissimilar to the team that played against Hearts. Maybe a couple of changes in personnel, but yeah, I think it'll be pretty similar, especially in the attacking line. You can't really change it with much, and I think the midfield three could be similar. The back four is a different conversation.
And not want to dwell on for now, but we actually weren't a million miles away against Hearts. That is a game that hinges on a couple of key moments. Dane Murray's own goal, the penalty. That side, it's an eachy peachy kind of game, and actually in spells, and some people won't like hearing this, in spells Celtic actually played very well. There was
Yep.
some great link-ups. The
Yep.
goal is brilliant. The move
Yep.
for Benjamin Negren's big chance is great. There's some great link-up in the second half. I wonder, and we'll see how this goes, I wonder what he'll do with key decisions such as Dane Murray versus Austin Trusty. He'll absolutely have thoughts on that. And Johnny Kenny against Shin Yamada. There's big calls to be made there. And we know that Martin O'Neill likes physical players. It was very much a staple of his game. But that game was 20 years ago. I wonder if that's where he's at, or him and Shaun Maloney will bounce things around. It's going to be intriguing, isn't it?
Yeah, the only thing I would say in that, and I thought about this earlier. I think he might take somebody like Donovan and Dane Murray out the firing line just now because I think it's a really difficult place to put the young players in at the moment where things are a total circus on and off the pitch. Like, let's be really honest, especially defensively, it was a calamity against Hearts. So I wouldn't be surprised if he took them out the firing line, and I don't think that would be bad management. I think Dane Murray, I totally agree with you with what you said. He needs support. He's going to make mistakes. But I'd be very, very surprised if he was included in the team tomorrow. And I thought Donovan has played well, but again, just due to his age and where he's at, I thought he might bring back Ralston and Trusty into the team just to make it a little bit more solid and a bit more experienced. That for me is the kind of mindset I think Martin O'Neill will have. I wouldn't be against that. I just think that's what he might do from his position.
Yeah, so I don't think we'll see wholesale changes, but maybe one or two key decisions to be made, and it'll be interesting to see what call Martin O'Neill and Shaun Maloney make there. Greg, as discussed, as agreed, as everyone knows, the circus is absolutely in town, and it looks like it's here to stay. This story will rumble on. We'll hear from Brendan Rodgers at some point. Celtic will appoint a manager at some point. We've got a very important game tomorrow night. We've got a massive game on Sunday. There's all sorts of things firing about, all sorts of things at play. But for now, Greg, your final thoughts on all things Celtic.
Yeah, I'm going to lie down in a dark room after this. I've got a sense of excitement though in terms of the new managerial appointment. I love Martin O'Neill, so I'm delighted to see him back. I hope the socks are tucked in over the trackies and he's got that Celtic rugby top on tomorrow night at Parkhead. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing him back in the sidelines. But I'm trying to be optimistic and just be looking forward. New manager, positive January transfer window, all of these things. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I kind of feel we need to, I know it's not easy, but kind of park what's been and try and move on as a support And I know that's really, really hard at the moment, but that has to come out in the coming weeks.
Yeah, it has to play out at some point. Let's see if tomorrow can be a starting point for it. But yeah, loads at play just now. Brendan Rodgers is absolutely gone. His time as Celtic manager is up. Martin O'Neill, if only temporarily, is here, along with Shaun Maloney. Dermot Desmond, he's gone in a different direction, and him and Brendan won't be swapping Christmas cards anytime soon. But from our point of view, it was important to cut through that in as much detail as we could. You know, the way the news broke last night, we didn't quite catch it, so we appreciate the time and the patience for folks that have been waiting for this episode. Thanks to Greg for joining me here on a Tuesday night all the way from Canada. Thanks to those of you who have stuck with us here on Celtic Exchange. We will be back after the game, but it will be Thursday with the post-match. I'll go along to the game tomorrow. We'll do a post-match on Thursday, then we'll have a big preview for the Rangers game on Friday and a post-match for that on Sunday, but that's all to come. Let's focus on Celtic v Falkirk, the return of Martin O'Neill in the meantime. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all again really soon.